Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. What if the greatest freedom you'll ever know, the deepest love you'll ever experience, and the strongest version of yourself you'll ever meet, doesn't come from being with someone, but from standing alone? What if living alone isn't loneliness at all, but the ultimate power move? The choice that makes you unstoppable, unshakable, and unbreakable. Imagine this for a moment. You wake up in the morning, sunlight pouring into your room, and the first thought that crosses your mind is not about someone else, what they need, what they want, whether they're happy, whether they're upset, but about you. Your day, your energy, your focus. That's not selfishness, that's freedom. That's alignment with yourself. Living alone, choosing yourself above all else, is not about isolation. It's about creating the strongest foundation any human being can have. And that foundation is built on self-respect, independence, and clarity. People romanticize relationships, and yes, they can be beautiful. But often, what's not said out loud is how many relationships are built on compromise that chips away at who you are. You give little pieces of yourself away, your time, your boundaries, your dreams, until one day you wake up and realize you're living someone else's story. Living alone strips all of that noise away. It demands that you confront who you are, without distraction, without excuses. And when you stand on your own 2 feet, fully accountable for your life, that's where the real power begins. When you are by yourself, there is no pretending. There is no hiding behind another person's energy. You don't get to blame your partner for your unhappiness or lean on them to fill the void inside of you. Living alone forces you to meet yourself face to face every single day. And yes, that's uncomfortable, but discomfort is where growth happens. You learn what you really enjoy, what routines make you thrive, what dreams actually belong to you, not the ones you borrowed from someone else. Aloneness teaches you resilience. When something breaks in your home, you fix it. When the bills need to be paid, you pay them. When you're having a bad day, you learn to soothe yourself, to pull yourself back up, to be your own rock. That doesn't just make you strong. It makes you unshakable. Because when you've proven to yourself that you can stand alone, no relationship can ever hold power over you again. You won't settle for half love, for crumbs of attention, for being anyone's afterthought. You'll know exactly who you are and what you deserve, because you've already built a full, rich life on your own. Living alone also gives you clarity about relationships. When you're alone, you realize that companionship is a bonus, not a necessity. It's not oxygen. You don't die without it. And once you realize you don't need someone, you finally get to choose from a place of power rather than desperation. Too many people get into relationships to avoid loneliness, to escape silence, to distract themselves from doing the deep work of self-discovery. But that's how we end up stuck, tolerating less than we deserve, clinging to people who dim our light. Living alone flips that script. It shows you that your own company is enough, that you can laugh with yourself, dance in your kitchen, sit in silence and feel at peace. And let's talk about freedom. True freedom. When you live alone, your time is yours. Your space is yours. Your dreams are yours. You can pursue the life you want without explanation or compromise. Want to wake up at 5 a.m. and train like an athlete? Do it. Want to travel the world without asking for permission or negotiating schedules? Pack your bag. Want to spend a Saturday in silence, writing, creating, building something from nothing? No one interrupts you. That is priceless. That is power. Now, some will argue that relationships are about love, about partnership, about sharing life. And yes, love is beautiful. But let's be honest. How many people are truly in love versus just coexisting? How many people stay because they're afraid of being alone? Because they confuse comfort with happiness, because they'd rather have someone than face themselves. Living alone reveals that truth. It gives you the courage to say, I would rather be on my own than be half alive in a relationship that doesn't nourish me. Living alone teaches you the difference between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness is emptiness. It's craving something outside of yourself to feel whole. Solitude is richness. It's discovering that wholeness already exists inside you. When you embrace solitude, you stop running. You stop grasping. You stop needing. You start living. You start creating. You start becoming someone who doesn't just survive on their own, but thrives on their own. The world tells you that success means finding someone to complete you. But the truth is, no one can complete you. You were never incomplete to begin with. What you need is not another person, it's courage. Courage to face your own shadows, courage to invest in your own growth, courage to build a life so fulfilling that anyone who enters it has to rise to meet your level. Living alone beats any relationship that asks you to shrink. It beats any relationship that asks you to compromise your values, silence your voice, delay your dreams. It beats any relationship where love is conditional, where you're tolerated rather than celebrated. Living alone beats any relationship that chains you. Because your life was never meant to be lived in chains. And here's the truth that few will admit: when you master living alone, you automatically master relationships. Because then you're not coming from a place of need, but from overflow. You're not demanding that someone else fix your brokenness. You've already healed yourself. You're not searching for validation. You've already validated yourself. And when you do choose to let someone in, it's not because you fear solitude, but because their presence adds value to a life you already love. That's the paradox. When you no longer need anyone, you're finally ready for the kind of relationship that is healthy, equal, and extraordinary. But until then, the most empowering, liberating, life-changing thing you can do is choose yourself. Choose your peace. Choose your growth. Choose your freedom. Living alone is not the absence of love. It is the highest form of self-love. It is standing tall and saying, I am enough, I am whole, I am capable, and my life is worthy, whether anyone walks beside me or not. That's the mindset that builds unshakable confidence, unbreakable resilience, and unstoppable momentum. That's the life that beats any relationship built on dependency, fear, or compromise. Because the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. And when you honor that above all else, you discover that living alone doesn't just beat any relationship, it rewrites the definition of love, freedom, and power. Because the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. And when you honor that above all else, you discover that living alone doesn't just beat any relationship. It rewrites the definition of love, freedom, and power. Think about how often people trade their own dreams for the comfort of companionship. They say yes to careers they don't want because it makes a partner feel secure. They say no to opportunities because it might upset the balance of the relationship. They silence parts of themselves, sometimes the most vibrant parts, just to keep the peace. And slowly, year after year, they disappear into a version of themselves that doesn't even feel like them anymore. Living alone doesn't allow that kind of slow erosion. When it's just you, you either rise or you stagnate, but at least the choice is yours. You own every step, every mistake, every victory. That kind of ownership is the essence of true freedom. When you live alone, you learn to become the architect of your environment. Every corner of your space reflects who you are. The books on the shelf, the art on the walls, the music playing in the background. It's all chosen by you, for you. And in those choices, you find alignment with yourself. There's no negotiating over taste, no compromising over lifestyle, no sacrificing what makes you feel alive. Your space becomes a mirror of your mind, and when that mirror reflects clarity and intention, you elevate every area of your life. There's also something deeply powerful about waking up alone and knowing you are the sole creator of your day. You don't wake up to conflict, to passive-aggressive silence, to the pressure of meeting someone else's expectations. You wake up to possibility. Every morning becomes a canvas, and you hold the brush. Do you realize how many people live entire lives without ever knowing that kind of freedom? They move from one obligation to another, never pausing to ask, what do I want? What matters to me? Living alone removes the noise and gives you the gift of hearing your own voice. And that voice, your voice, is the compass you've been searching for all along. It tells you when to rest, when to push, when to take risks, when to let go. Most of the time, we ignore it because we're drowned out by the demands of relationships, of family, of society. But in solitude, that voice becomes clear, steady, and trustworthy. And once you learn to follow it, you stop second-guessing yourself. You stop needing validation from others. You stop handing your power away. Living alone also sharpens your ability to set boundaries. Because when it's just you, you realize how much your energy matters. You see clearly who drains you and who uplifts you. You start protecting your time like the precious resource it is. And here's the beauty. Once you practice boundaries alone, you naturally carry them into every interaction. No one gets to walk over you, no one gets to manipulate you, no one gets to take advantage of you. Because you've already trained yourself to stand tall on your own. Solitude also awakens your creativity. When there's no one else to entertain, no endless conversations filling the silence, your mind opens. Ideas flow. Projects you've been putting off suddenly become alive. You tap into a well of inspiration you didn't even know existed. Some of the greatest works of art, literature, and innovation were born out of solitude. Why? Because being alone forces you to look inward, to draw from your own imagination instead of constantly being distracted by the external world. That's where breakthroughs happen. And let's not ignore the strength you build in handling challenges solo. When you're alone, there's no one to lean on, and at first, that feels terrifying. But then something shifts. You realize you are capable of so much more than you thought. You solve problems, you face fears, you endure setbacks, and with every obstacle, you grow stronger. That strength is permanent. Once you discover it, no one can take it away. You walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with an energy that says, I can handle anything. Living alone also teaches you patience. In relationships, it's easy to distract yourself with constant interaction, with the highs and lows of someone else's moods. But when you're on your own, you sit with yourself. You learn to breathe through boredom, to stay present in silence, to find joy in the simplest of moments. That patience translates into resilience. Suddenly, life's frustrations don't rattle you as much. You develop an inner calm that no relationship drama can give you. And here's a truth few people admit. When you live alone, you stop fearing being left. You stop fearing abandonment because you've already proven to yourself that you can thrive without anyone. That fear is what traps so many in toxic situations. They're terrified of starting over, of the silence of the unknown. But once you embrace solitude, the unknown becomes exciting. Starting over becomes an opportunity, not a punishment. That is real independence. Living alone also deepens your capacity for love. Not the needy, conditional kind of love that clings, but the expansive kind of love that overflows. When you're full within yourself, you can give without losing. You can love without fear. You can connect without trying to control. That's because you no longer seek completion in others. You've already completed yourself. And ironically, that makes you far more attractive. People are drawn to those who radiate independence, who don't demand but invite, who don't chase but magnetize. You also discover joy in the smallest victories. Cooking for yourself, paying off a bill, hitting a personal goal. These things matter more when you're the one responsible. And those little victories compound into confidence. Confidence that doesn't come from praise, doesn't come from approval, doesn't come from someone saying, I'm proud of you. It comes from you looking in the mirror and saying, I did this, I built this, I am enough. Another gift of living alone is the chance to redefine happiness. So many people believe happiness is tied to relationships, to romance, to someone choosing them. But solitude reveals that happiness is already available, in your routines, in your passions, in your growth. It's in the book you read late at night, the workout that pushes you past your limits, the walk where your thoughts finally make sense. Happiness stops being something someone else can give or take away. It becomes something you cultivate, like a garden, inside yourself. And in that cultivation, you develop gratitude. Gratitude for the quiet, for the space, for the autonomy. Gratitude for the ability to design your life without compromise. Gratitude for the strength you've gained, the clarity you've discovered, the self-respect you've built. Gratitude for the realization that your worth was never tied to someone else's validation. That gratitude anchors you. It becomes the foundation of unshakable peace. Living alone also makes you fearless about being misunderstood. When you spend time with yourself, you stop living for other people's approval. You stop worrying about fitting into their expectations. You learn that being authentic matters more than being accepted. And when you carry that into the world, you inspire others. You show them what it looks like to choose yourself unapologetically. You give them permission to do the same. Solitude strips away illusions. You see clearly which relationships in your life are genuine and which are built on convenience. You stop tolerating one-sided connections. You stop overextending yourself. You start demanding reciprocity, not because you're bitter, but because you've learned to value your energy. And once you've tasted the peace of living alone, you won't exchange it for chaos disguised as love. Living alone also teaches you to celebrate yourself. Birthdays, achievements, milestones, you stop waiting for others to make them special. You make them special. You buy yourself flowers. You book the trip. You light the candle. You raise the glass to yourself. And in doing so, you discover that the best celebrations are the ones where you are your own source of joy. Every time you choose solitude over settling, you reinforce your self-worth. Every time you create happiness alone, you prove your independence. Every time you rise from a challenge on your own, you strengthen your resilience. And all of that builds a life that is rich, fulfilling, and deeply powerful. A life that makes any relationship, no matter how romanticized, secondary to the connection you've built with yourself. Every time you choose solitude over settling, you reinforce your self-worth. Every time you create happiness alone, you prove your independence. Every time you rise from a challenge on your own, you strengthen your resilience. And all of that builds a life that is rich, fulfilling, and deeply powerful. A life that makes any relationship, no matter how romanticized, secondary to the connection you've built with yourself. And once you understand that, your perspective on everything changes. You stop chasing people who don't value you. You stop bending yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. You stop apologizing for your standards. Instead, you begin to hold yourself like treasure, because that's exactly what you are. Living alone teaches you to treat yourself with reverence. It teaches you to honor your needs, your desires, your goals, and your peace. And when you've learned to treat yourself that way, you will never again allow someone else to treat you with anything less. When you live alone, you also learn the rhythm of your own seasons. You start to notice when your energy is high and when you need rest. You see how your creativity flows at certain times, how your mind is sharpest in certain hours. In relationships, these rhythms often get muted, interrupted, or forced to adapt to someone else's pace. But in solitude, you learn to move with your own natural flow, and that makes you unstoppable. Because success isn't about grinding every day, it's about aligning with your energy and maximizing it. Living alone gives you the space to figure that out. You also become your own teacher. In the silence of solitude, lessons rise to the surface. Lessons about patience, about forgiveness, about discipline. You realize that everything you once sought in others, a mentor, a partner, a guide, already exists within you if you're willing to listen. That doesn't mean you don't value other people's wisdom, but you stop depending on it. You recognize that your intuition, your experience, and your resilience have shaped you into someone capable of guiding yourself. And when you trust yourself like that, you stop needing approval and you stop fearing mistakes. You embrace life fully because you know you can handle whatever comes. Another truth about living alone is that it strengthens your relationship with time. When you're on your own, you see clearly how precious time is. There are no endless arguments draining your hours, no waiting for someone else to catch up to your vision, no dragging yourself through situations that don't serve you. Your time becomes sacred. You invest it in growth, in health, in creativity, in building the life you want. And the more you value your time, the less tolerance you have for anything or anyone that wastes it. Living alone also pushes you to take responsibility for your happiness. You no longer get to say, if only they loved me more, I'd be happy. You can't use someone else's behavior as the excuse for your dissatisfaction. It's all on you. And at first, that might feel heavy. But eventually you see it for what it really is: empowerment. Because if your happiness depends only on you, that means you can shape it, create it, multiply it without waiting on anyone. That is the most liberating realization you can have. And when you become the source of your own happiness, you glow differently. You stop radiating desperation and start radiating confidence. You stop asking, do you like me? And start asking, do I even want you in my space? That shift in energy changes everything. People will feel it when you walk into a room. They will sense that you don't need them, and that's exactly why they'll want to be around you. Independence is magnetic. Self-respect is irresistible. Living alone also cultivates discipline. Without the external accountability of a partner or family, you are the one responsible for your routines, your goals, your follow-through. And if you choose to rise to that challenge, you develop habits that make you unbreakable. You stop waiting for someone else to push you. You become your own motivator, your own coach, your own leader. And once you've built that kind of internal discipline, you can achieve anything you set your mind to. And then comes the joy of discovering who you really are, stripped of influence. What do you love when no one is watching? What would you pursue if no one had an opinion? What lights you up when you don't need to impress anyone? Those are the questions Solitude answers. And once you find those answers, you never again lose yourself in the noise of the crowd. You stand firmly in your truth, and that truth becomes your compass. Living alone teaches you that silence is not empty, it is full. Full of ideas, full of peace, full of possibility. The world is noisy, relationships are noisy, but silence reveals everything you need to know. In silence, you hear your intuition. In silence, you face your fears. In silence, you gain clarity. And once you make peace with silence, you will never again tolerate the kind of shallow noise that fills so many relationships. Another lesson Solitude gives you is the art of self-celebration. You stop waiting for someone else to recognize your achievements. You throw yourself a party for finishing a project. You buy yourself something special because you've earned it. You raise a glass to your own growth, and in celebrating yourself, you reinforce the message that you are worthy, valuable, and deserving of joy, without needing anyone to tell you so. When you've mastered living alone, you also redefine what love means. Love stops being about dependency, possession, or fear of loss. It becomes about freedom, respect, and choice. And because you no longer fear solitude, you can love others in a healthier way. You can love them without clinging, without controlling, without losing yourself. And that kind of love, if it ever enters your life, will be pure and powerful, not desperate and draining. Living alone also strengthens your courage. It takes courage to sit in a quiet apartment when the world tells you you should be chasing relationships. It takes courage to walk into a restaurant and eat alone when society equates solitude with loneliness. It takes courage to say, I am enough, when everyone around you is searching for completion in someone else. But that courage grows each time you choose yourself, and eventually, it becomes unshakable. You begin to see that solitude is not punishment. It is privilege. It is the privilege of knowing yourself deeply, of building a life on your own terms, of creating without compromise. And once you've tasted that privilege, you protect it fiercely. You won't hand it away for the sake of convenience or appearances. You won't betray yourself just to say you're in a relationship. You'll wait for something extraordinary. Or you'll keep building your extraordinary life alone. Living alone is also the training ground for resilience. You'll have days when it feels heavy, when loneliness whispers in your ear, when you wonder if you've made the right choice. But those moments are the exact moments that sharpen you. They teach you to sit with discomfort, to breathe through it, to rise above it. And when you do, you realize that loneliness is temporary, but the strength you build from facing it lasts forever. And perhaps the greatest gift of living alone is the discovery that you are whole. You realize that your value was never dependent on anyone choosing you. Your beauty was never diminished by solitude. Your worth was never measured by your relationship status. You were always enough. Living alone just strips away the distractions so you can finally see it. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to living half a life, chained to fear. Silencing yourself for the sake of acceptance, you will walk forward differently. You will carry yourself with certainty. You will build a life that reflects your highest vision. And whether someone joins you on that path or not will never define you. Because you've already defined yourself. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to living half a life, chained to fear, silencing yourself for the sake of acceptance. You will walk forward differently. You will carry yourself with certainty. You will build a life that reflects your highest vision. And whether someone joins you on that path or not will never define you. Because you've already defined yourself. And that definition of self becomes the compass you live by. You stop bending under the weight of society's timelines. Stop comparing yourself to people who seem ahead because of their relationships, marriages, or families. You stop measuring your worth against someone else's milestones. You realize that your life is not late, it is not behind, it is not incomplete, it is uniquely yours. And living alone allows you to embrace it fully, without apology, without compromise, without distraction. Living alone also exposes you to the raw truth of responsibility. Every bill, every choice, every consequence rests on you. Some may see that as a burden, but in reality it is liberation. Because responsibility is power. Responsibility means you are the one in control. You are the author of your story, not a co-writer negotiating every paragraph. That kind of control is terrifying for those who run from accountability. But for those who embrace it, it is exhilarating. And in that responsibility you learn the art of resilience. You face days when everything feels heavy. When the silence feels suffocating. When you wonder if you've chosen the harder path. But every time you endure, every time you rise from that moment stronger than before, you prove to yourself that you are unbreakable. Resilience is not built in comfort. It is forged in fire. And living alone gives you that fire. There is also a sacredness to solitude that relationships often cannot offer. When you're alone, you have uninterrupted time to connect to your inner world. You learn the depth of your own thoughts, the richness of your imagination, the strength of your spirit. You find a spiritual connection with yourself and the world that is often drowned out by the constant presence of another. And when you tap into that connection, you realize you were never truly alone. You were always part of something bigger, something powerful, something eternal. Living alone also transforms your relationship with fear. At first, fear of the unknown can feel overwhelming. The fear of silence, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough. But when you face that fear day after day and survive, something incredible happens. Fear loses its grip. You stop being afraid of being alone, and once that fear disappears, so do all the smaller fears tied to it. You stop fearing rejection. You stop fearing abandonment. You stop fearing judgment. Because the worst fear, the fear of standing alone, you've already conquered. And conquering that fear unleashes courage. Courage to take risks. Courage to dream bigger. Courage to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you. Courage to be fully, unapologetically yourself. Living alone is not just about survival, it is about expansion. You expand into someone bolder, braver, and more authentic than you ever imagined. Another lesson solitude teaches is how to create joy on your own terms. You no longer rely on someone else's mood, someone else's attention, someone else's affection to feel good. You build your own rituals of joy. A morning routine that energizes you. A hobby that excites you. A quiet evening that nourishes you. These small moments add up, creating a life filled with sustainable happiness. Happiness that no one can take away from you. And because you've mastered creating joy, you also learn to master peace. Peace becomes your baseline. Peace becomes your normal. You no longer accept chaos disguised as passion, drama disguised as love, or control disguised as care. Your standard rises. You only welcome what aligns with your peace. And that is one of the greatest gifts of living alone. The ability to protect your serenity like it is sacred, because it is. Living alone also shows you that solitude and strength attract opportunity. When you are grounded in yourself, when you radiate independence, opportunities flow to you. Career opportunities, creative opportunities, financial opportunities. Why? Because you've created space for them. You're not drowning in conflict or compromise. You're not silencing yourself to maintain harmony. You're not wasting energy trying to be someone else's savior. You're free. And that freedom opens doors you never even knew existed. There's also a freedom in designing your own definition of love. Without the pressure of fitting into traditional molds, you get to decide what love means for you. Maybe love is found in friendship. Maybe love is found in passion projects. Maybe love is found in the way you serve others, the way you nurture yourself, the way you connect with the world. Living alone frees you from the narrow definition of love as only romance, and once you broaden that definition, your life overflows with it. And with that overflow, you stop being afraid of missing out. You no longer look at couples and think, they have something I don't. Instead, you think, I have something many of them may never know: freedom, self-respect, independence, peace. You realize that you're not missing out. You're building something different. Something powerful, something uniquely your own. Living alone also reshapes how you see success. Success is no longer about proving yourself to anyone else. It's no longer about ticking boxes or meeting expectations. Success becomes about alignment, living in harmony with your values, your vision, your truth. And when you live that way, you create a success that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. When you choose solitude, you also learn the art of presence. Without constant distraction, you learn to be here, fully in the moment. You taste your food. You feel the sun on your skin. You notice the details of life you used to overlook. And in that presence, life becomes richer. You stop rushing. You stop craving what's next. You start appreciating what is. And that gratitude turns every ordinary moment into something extraordinary. Living alone also frees you from settling. Too often, people stay in relationships not because they are happy, but because they are afraid. Afraid of the silence, afraid of starting over, afraid of being judged. But when you've mastered solitude, those fears no longer control you. You would rather be alone than in something that dims your light. That is real power, the power to choose quality over comfort, freedom over fear, truth over illusion. And when you live that way, you become an example. You show others what it looks like to choose themselves, to prioritize their peace, to build a life from the inside out. You show them that solitude is not weakness, but strength, that living alone is not a failure, but a victory, that choosing yourself is not selfish, but necessary. And in doing so, you inspire others to rise, to demand more, to embrace their own journeys. Every day you live alone, you reinforce the truth that your worth is not negotiable, that your dreams are not optional, that your life is not something to be compromised away for the sake of fitting in. You stand as proof that independence is not just possible, but powerful. And once you've built that kind of life, no relationship can ever break you, because you no longer build on sand. You build on stone.